Hello musicians, welcome back. My name is Buckydurddle and I'm doing another video tutorial on the VCV Rack Modular Synthesis DAW. Now VCV Rack has a lot of fantastic modules which are free to use because many of these modules are open source. Some aren't, but many of them are, most are. And we're going through some of these, the more interesting ones, the more complicated ones, the ones that give you unique sounds for your music. I'm going through these and giving these technical tutorials on how they work. Now, I'm not showing you how to use it in your music. I'm showing you actually technically how these pieces of software work. Now, sometimes some of these modules are based heavily on physics. And in order to understand how they work, we have to understand the physics behind it, behind the sound production. Now, when we did the last LFO with Frozen Wasteland, we did Lisa U LFO, we did the BPM LFO, we did the Roulette LFO. All of these LFOs had something within physics it was based on. The Roulette LFO was based on roulette curves. So these things, many of these modules are very heavily tied to geometry and physics. So the Vox Inhumana is also. So in order to understand what all these knobs and dials and things do, and understand this, we need to understand the physics behind it. Without the physics, we really don't know what we're doing here. So we have to talk a little bit about the physics. Okay, Vox Inhumana is a voice synthesizer. It synthesizes the sound of a human voice. Now, we are going to go through some of that physics, and then I'm going to come back and talk to you about all of what we see in front of us. Before I go into the physics, let me just make some sound so you can hear what I'm going to be referring to. So let me just turn on my mixer. So this is set at bass, a bass singer, and they're doing an A. And you can hear it sounds like an A. Let's go to an E. An I. O. And U. So you can see that it actually makes a sound that sounds very convincingly a human voice doing vowels. Okay, so now that you've seen that, let's pop out to a website to look at some physics. Okay, this is a website you can see at the top here. This is a website from University of Chicago. So please check this out. I'll put the link to this document in the post. In this, they take all the different sounds for all the vowels and the singers and the singing, the range of the voices. We see soprano, tenor, alto, bass. They take all these and they break it down for us. So let's take the A. We just listened to a bass A, this one here. And we know that in the bass A, the frequency is 600 hertz. At an amplitude of 0 decibels. The next overtone up would be 1040 and at 1040 hertz, and it will be minus 7 dB. 2250 at minus 9, 2450 at minus 9, and then 2750 at minus 20. Okay, so these two sections here basically give us the overview of what the frequency will be to produce that A sound in a bass. So a bass singer will be doing that. Now, how's it done? Well, in a human, I'm going to speak the obvious here now. In a human, vocal cords, windpipe, our mouth, our sinuses, all these parts together resonate to create the sounds that we would recognize as vowel sounds. So A is an A sound. We do it very naturally as part of speaking. But when we analyze the sound, we find that this is the characteristics that we're getting. These are the frequency responses and the amplitudes of the frequencies that will produce that sound. If a bass was doing an E, you can see the sounds are different. You see that? So, and the amplitudes, the frequencies, amplitudes are different. And if we go to different voice ranges like countertenor or alto, they are again different. So what Frozen Wastelands has done is they have taken this table, all of these formant values, because these are formant values. They've taken these, they've created the sound synthesis, the voice synthesis. So now let's go back. Let's have a look. Let's go back to Rack. Before we get started on how to use Vox Inhumana, let's have a look at my setup here. Okay, let's have a look at my system. I'm going to zoom back out a little bit. Now, first of all, my audio interface right here. This is just running out to my computer, and I have two inputs. They're going into the CF master module. Now, there's another tutorial showing you how to create your own mixer using mono. Stereo is another module, which you don't see here, and master. So you can create your own mixer. And I really like this. So that's what I'm using for today. You can see here that we have two outs going to our ins on our interface, which is just my left and right my computer speakers. And these are connected. These are just connecting the left and right from the mono to the master. I'm going in from Vox Inhumana. I'm connected to Bog Audio's analyzer. Now, you've seen this before in my tutorials. You've seen it many times. I love this. It's a frequency analyzer, so it shows us frequencies. So the lower frequencies are on the left, the higher frequencies are on the right. So that's going to let us look at how Frozen Wasteland has laid out all of our frequencies we need for every one of the vocal sounds. Okay, let's move over here. Oops, sorry to be moving around so much. We're using an oscillator. I'm using a VCO1 from Fundamentals. Vox Inhumana works best with saw and square waves. I'm using saw right now. I'll experiment with both in a minute, but we're using saw right now, and I'm using the VCO for that. Nice big frequency dial. I can go back and forth. But if you get fancy, you can be using a sequencer and sequencing in different pitches and having it, playing it back. But we're just keeping it very basic because I want to show you technically how it works. I'm going into a VCA, which is my Fundamentals VCA, because I want to be able to control the output. Okay, I want to control it as it goes into Vox Humana. I don't just want a straight wave, straight pitch going in there. I want to be able to control it. So I'm using a VCA. I do have it topped out here, but I want to be able to control it a little bit here, control the input. Okay. Now, I do also have an LFO up here, but I'm going to use that a little later. I'll show you that later, but I have Fundamentals LFO1 up here. Okay, now let's get into Vox Humana. I'm going to zoom back in here a bit. Now, let me turn on my volume again. You can hear we have a bass A, a bass A. Very convincing vowel sound. Let me just change the voice. I'm going to talk to you more about the interface in a minute, but it's a tenor, and then we go to countertenor, alto, some of these can be a little harsh. Let's go to square wave. No, not working. Let's go back to saw, and let's go to soprano. Still very convincing, isn't it? So you can see it is very convincing sounds. I'm really surprised at how good this is because I've heard synthesis in the past and it's been pretty sad, but this is really, really good. Considering what we have here, we have an open source, free to use voice synthesizer. These things can be very expensive in non-open source tech. So it's very exciting to see this. Okay. Now, let's just go back. I want to remind you of something. I'm going to go back to my document. And you can see here that we do have 5 frequencies. Okay, 5 frequencies. I'm just at the top here, tenor A. 5 frequencies. The first frequency, 650 hertz, 0 dB. Second one, 1080 minus 6. So you get the idea. Now let's go back to rack. We have 5 frequencies. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Each one of these, when you switch to your vowel sound and your voice selector, it will give you, well, I'll go to tenor because we were just on tenor. So go to tenor. So this would be the number 1 would be if in relevant terms, because I'm not sure if we're on the bass frequency, but 650 and 0 dB. So, and now, like, wherever we move the frequency dial over here on the VCO, that will change that frequency, but it's relevant. It's relevant to the base, the root frequency. Okay, it's 650 above the root frequency. We have this is the frequency, okay, and this is the amplitude. It's marked here, right? So this is the frequency right here of that first frequency, and this is the amplitude. Okay, how loud it's going to be. Now let's just turn on our volume again. Listen to our tenor A. I'm gonna initialize this again and go back to tenor. There we go. Now, okay, so that's a nice little ah sound. Now let's have a look what happens over here when I adjust my frequency. You can see on analyzer here, this is my lowest frequency. You can hear it going back and through, going up and down. Okay, I'll put it back in the center where it was. My second one. You see that changing? And then third. You can see it moving around. And again, I'll put it back in center. And I'll put the fourth. And the fifth. Fifth is very slight. And if we go back now, let's go back to our document. The fifth one is minus 22 dB. So I said it's very slight because it's very, very quiet. And it's 3250 above our root frequency. Okay? So now let me just I'm going to turn this down a little. Now you heard the way this changed. Now, I will mention that if you ever listen to Mongolian throat singing, you probably heard this kind of effect. Because Mongolian throat singers can change the shape of their vocal apparatus to allow the overtones to move up and down while maintaining a root, or make the root move while keeping the overtones steady. Very, very cool. So you might want to check that out. Mongolian throat singing, this is exactly what they're manipulating, but they're doing it themselves in humans. Now, that's this frequency you saw me change. This amplitude will change the actual amplitude of each of these overtones, these frequencies. So you can see this is the lowest one. And our fifth one, very slight, remember. And it doesn't allow us to move it a whole lot. They have, you notice that I can't really turn it a whole lot, and that's because Frozen Wasteland have limited the amount of change we can apply to these. Frequency change and amplitude change, because after a certain point it just gets crazy. So they've limited it so that they've limited the amount of frequency can change for each of these, and it's different, and the amount of amplitude it can change for each one of them. Like, so if you look, for example, at the first frequency, it might change quite a bit. You see that? It changes quite a bit, goes from like all the way down to nothing up to pretty high. And likewise, down at the bottom here, the lowest frequency, there's not much change at all. So it's very, very little in decibel levels. Okay, and then if we go, so keep your eye on your frequency here. I'm going to turn my volume back up a little so we can get a good look at the our frequency on analyzer. Let's change to bass. You can see the way it changed, and we have our different. You know, it's got different colors because when you go back, if we go back to our document here, we go to bass A, it's different set of numbers. It's different set of numbers, and it's different decibel levels. than the tenor. And that's what gives us a different color. So we'll go back again to rack, and you'll see that. And then if we go to countertenor, here it is again. I'll notice that, look at the overtones, the high overtones right here, countertenor versus tenor. See that? It's a different color. It's designed different. It's designed different. Now if we go to a different one, E, and I'll change my frequency. See, it does sound like an E. It really does. And then I, O, and then U. Very convincing, isn't it? Okay, now let's go back to A. Turn my volume down a little. In vowel sounds, we have a hard A, which is A. We have a soft A, which is ah. Now, depending on how we can adjust the first two of our frequencies, you can make it into a hard A or a soft A. This is more of an ah. This would be more of an A. You can hear the difference by adjusting these. It has more of a hard A. And then by going down with that second frequency, more of an ah. So you can do the same with the other vowel sounds too. You can change, by adjusting these slightly, the first two frequencies, you can change your vowel sounds from a hard vowel to a soft vowel. So you can change those. Now, you can also adjust these different settings with an LFO. And of course, we have an LFO here. And if I turn this on here, let's get some sound back. Now we get the LFO hooked up, and then this dial right here is adjust the amount that it will. You see? And again, it will limit the amount of change. It won't allow it to go right off the scales. Frozen Wasteland keeps it within a manageable range, because really, if you were to crank this all the way up, you'd think it would go right up into like 22,000 hertz. But no, it's not. It's staying down in a very manageable range. And the same, when you go this way, it drops the sound. Let me turn my frequency up. You can get a vibrato, you see, by doing a little bit of a change. You can get a little bit of a, you can still get the ah sound, and you can get a little bit of vibrato. Let's try an E. Maybe you might want to. Oh, of course we'd have to adjust. We'd have to adjust some of these. Sorry, I forgot that I didn't have LFOs attached to those. But, you can run multiple, like this. But we'd have to adjust it to make sure it fits exactly what we want. So the adjustment will be exactly what we're looking for. Anyway, but that's how you can create vibrato, by using an LFO. Okay? Now, so let's do a little bit of review. Oh, yeah, and I of course, I didn't introduce this, but you can change the vowel sound by changing this, and you can change the voice sound by doing this. I didn't actually point that out, but you can. Okay, I did it, and I didn't tell you I was doing it. So let's review now. Let's review a little. Vox Inhumana, it's a sound synthesis. It synthesizes vowel sounds, human vowel sounds. So from the document, as we saw earlier, I'm not going to go through it again, but from this document right here from University of Chicago, they give out all the frequencies relative to our root frequency, all the frequencies and the amplitudes in order to create a certain sound based on what the vocal range is. So, for example, tenor A, this would be the frequencies that are found. There are frequencies along with our overtones above the root frequencies. and the amplitude level for each of those frequencies. And if we go back now to Inhumana, Vox Inhumana, Vox Inhumana, sorry, my Latin, there are 5 frequencies. This controls the frequency, as we just saw in the tables, and this controls the amplitude of that frequency. And this dial controls the CV inputs for each of these. I didn't demonstrate CV off the amplitude, but you get the idea. Amplitude, loudness. So an LFO would demonstrate that. I don't need to show you that. That's basic material. So that's basically it. Formants. It's it's very cool. Vox Humana is a great open source module for doing voice synthesis. I did another one a while ago on a tutorial on Helm synthesizer, and it had a very basic formant module in it. That's an open source synth. It had a very basic formant module, which you might want to look at as well. There's tutorials in here on that as well in Utopian. So there you go. I hope this shed some light on Vox Inhumana. I really like this module. I'm sure I'll be using it for all kinds of cool things, and I hope you will too. If you have any questions about Vox Humana or any other module, please leave a message for me in here in the comments. You can also get me on utopian.io Discord. Feel free also, if you want to suggest any modules like for me to do tutorials on, I'd love to hear from you. There are many modules out there, and there are many that are quite complicated. I'd be happy to dig into them and see if I can figure out a way to make them work and report back to you. I'd be happy to do that. So let me know. I also love to hear your music with this material too, so send me some links to your music. Okay, thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate your time, and if you have any questions, let me know, and I will see you next time.